All right, so get this. You guys sent in a bunch of stuff on those AI death clock apps,
Hmm.
and honestly, kind of creepy, right? But also kind of fascinating.
Definitely intriguing.
So we're going to do a deep dive today, really unpack this whole thing,
Good.
figure out how the tech actually works, if these things are actually useful.
Yeah.
And of course, we got to talk about the ethics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, predicting death, that's some heavy stuff.
It really is. And it's interesting to see how this whole idea has evolved, you know?
Oh, yeah.
We've gone from ancient civilizations, like think oracles and all that,
Right, right.
to like those old school life expectancy calculators.
Yeah, like based on what, your age and gender and stuff?
Exactly. Very basic stuff. But now AI is bringing a whole new level of analysis to the table.
Yeah, I was reading in the source material how even the ancient Romans, they were obsessed with trying to figure out how long they'd live.
Oh,
They had
absolutely.
these crazy rituals and everything.
It's a timeless fascination, you know? Trying to peek behind the curtain of mortality.
Totally. But AI definitely brings a new dimension to it.
Yeah.
So how do these apps actually work? I mean, they're not just like looking at your birth date and spitting out a random number, right?
No, no, not at all. They're using machine learning, which is basically training computers to find patterns in massive amounts of data.
Okay, so like what kind of data?
Think health records, lifestyle info, like what you get from wearables, even genetics are starting to play a role.
Hold on, genetics. So are these apps saying our destiny is like predetermined?
Hmm.
That free will is out the window?
That's a great question, and it gets to the core of what makes these apps so controversial.
Right.
They're not saying your fate is sealed, but they are looking for patterns in your genes that might correlate with longevity.
So like if your family has a history of heart disease, the app might factor that in.
Exactly. But it's important to remember it's just one piece of a very complex puzzle.
So it's more like a personalized probability score,
Yeah.
constantly updating based on your choices and all these different factors, right? So,
Exactly. AI predictions, especially when we're talking about something as complex as lifespan, are probabilistic, not deterministic.
okay, so it's not like you'll die on this date, but more like based on current trends, here's a range of possibilities.
That's a much better way to put it. Yeah.
It makes sense, though. There are just so many variables, right? I mean, you could get hit by a bus tomorrow, or scientists could discover some crazy life extension breakthrough next year. Who knows?
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to understand the limitations of these predictions.
Right, right.
Things like accidents, sudden illnesses, even future medical advancements, those are all wild cards that can totally throw off any prediction model.
So it's like trying to predict the weather a year in advance.
Yeah.
You can look at historical patterns and all that, but ultimately, there are too many factors at play to be 100% accurate.
A perfect analogy.
Okay, so if these predictions aren't set in stone, what's the point of these apps? Are they just for, like, morbid curiosity? Is it just about freaking people out?
Well, while some folks are definitely drawn to that element of mystery,
Sure, sure.
some of these apps are actually designed to be more than just a novelty.
Really?
Yeah, the developers are trying to frame them as tools for self-improvement, for making positive changes.
Yeah, the source material mentioned things like health awareness and life planning.
Exactly.
But how does knowing, even roughly, how long you might live help with that?
Well, think about it. Imagine seeing a prediction that's lower than you'd hoped for.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be a powerful motivator to maybe start making some healthier choices?
yeah, I guess so.
Like eat better, exercise more, manage stress.
Hmm. Suddenly those things take on a whole new level of importance, huh?
Exactly. And it's not just about physical health either. Some of these apps encourage you to be more proactive about your finances,
Oh, interesting.
your relationships, your bucket list, all the things you want to accomplish in life.
Yeah, yeah.
Knowing your time might be limited, even if it's just a range of possibilities, it can be a really powerful motivator to live more fully in the present.
I like that it's not just about knowing when you'll die, but about making the most of the time you have.
Exactly. It's about empowering you to shape your own destiny within the limits of, well, mortality.
Right, right. So these apps aren't just about predicting the future. They're about giving you the tools to actually change it.
Precisely. And then on a broader level, the data these apps collect could be incredibly valuable for medical research.
Oh, how so?
Imagine scientists studying patterns in this data, trying to uncover new insights about longevity and disease prevention.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It could lead to breakthroughs that benefit everyone, not just the individual users.
So even though these apps might seem a bit morbid on the surface, there's actually a potential upside, both for individual users and for society as a whole.
That's the argument, yeah. But of course, we can't talk about AI death clocks without addressing the elephant in the room.
The ethics.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing raises some serious questions.
It does.
Like, what happens if someone sees a prediction they don't like and it sends them into a spiral of anxiety or despair?
Absolutely. That's a huge concern.
Or what if this data falls into the wrong hands? It could be used for discrimination, all sorts of bad stuff.
There's a lot of potential for misuse.
And even on a more personal level, what happens if someone starts making major life decisions based solely on what these apps tell them? Is that responsible?
Right. Are we giving these algorithms too much power?
It's a tricky balance for sure. I mean, we have to remember these apps are still in their early stages. There's a lot we don't know about their long-term impact.
We're in uncharted territory here, testing the water.
Yeah, and we've only just scratched the surface of this whole thing.
We've laid the groundwork, but there's a lot more to explore.
Definitely. In part 2, I want to dive into some specific examples of these AI death clock apps and see how they actually work.
Okay, yeah.
We can compare features, approaches, maybe even try to assess their accuracy as much as we can anyway.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Looking forward to it.
All right, so we've talked about AI death clocks in general, but I'm kind of curious to see how these things actually work in practice.
Yeah, let's get into the specifics.
The source material mentioned a few apps like Death Clock AI, Reaper Predictor, and Lifespan AI.
Right.
Let's break those down, see what makes each one unique.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so Death Clock AI, that's the first one. What sets that one apart?
Well, this one seems to be known for its detailed health insights.
Okay.
It doesn't just give you a number and say, see you later.
Right.
It actually tries to explain the factors that are influencing your predicted lifespan.
So instead of saying you've got X years left, it's more like, here's what's affecting your longevity.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So what kind of stuff does it look at?
Well, think of it like a personalized health report card, but instead of grades, it shows the potential impact on your lifespan.
Okay.
It analyzes things like your diet, exercise habits, sleep patterns, stress levels, even genetic predispositions.
Wow, that's a lot of information.
It is, but then it takes it a step further and offers recommendations for improvement.
So it's like having a personal health coach, but with a much bigger picture in mind.
That's a great way to put it. It's leveraging the power of AI to not just analyze data, but to actually give you actionable advice.
I like it. All right, next up you've got Reaper Predictor. Gotta say, that name is a bit intense.
Yeah, a little ominous, right?
Yeah, but I guess it's memorable.
And I think that's the point. It's meant to grab your attention.
So is this one just about scaring people?
No, not necessarily. This app seems to lean more into the behavioral psychology side of things.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it's less about predicting the exact date you'll die and more about using that awareness of mortality as a way to motivate you to make healthier choices.
So it's about empowering you to take control of how you live, rather than just focusing on when you'll die.
Exactly. It's about shifting your mindset.
So like what the app gives you little nudges throughout the day.
It could be something like that, or maybe it highlights the potential impact of even small changes. Oh, I see.
Like if you start walking for 30 minutes a day, you could potentially add X years to your lifespan.
Yeah, I guess framing it like that could be pretty motivating.
It taps into something we all care about, living longer and healthier lives.
It's like turning a potentially scary topic into a source of inspiration.
Exactly, and that's what I find so intriguing about these apps. They're not just about feeding our curiosity about death, they're about using that knowledge to actually improve our lives.
That's a good point. All right, last but not least, we've got Lifespan AI. What's their shtick?
This one is particularly interesting because it incorporates genetic data into its calculations.
Wait, really? So they actually analyze your DNA?
They do. It's all about personalization.
But is that level of detail even accurate? I mean, genes are just one piece of the puzzle, right?
You're absolutely right. Your genes aren't your destiny.
Right.
Lifestyle, environment, random chance, those all play a huge role.
It's like that whole nature versus nurture debate, but applied to lifespan. Exactly. But Lifespan AI is betting that by combining genetic data with all those other factors, your health history, lifestyle choices, even your location, it can make more accurate predictions.
It's like they're trying to find that sweet spot where nature meets nurture.
Exactly. And they're using AI to try and untangle all those complex interactions.
It's a bold approach, but even with all that data, how could you really be sure about these predictions? I mean, we talked about all the uncertainties involved.
Right, and that's the challenge with these apps.
Yeah.
Validating their accuracy takes a long time, like a really long time.
You basically have to wait for people to, actually die to
Yeah.
see how accurate the predictions were.
This is the long game, but some researchers are starting to look back at historical data, comparing predictions from older models to actual lifespans.
Oh, so like seeing how well those old algorithms performed
Exactly. It's a slow process, but it could give us some insights into how these AI-powered predictions are evolving.
and how their accuracy is improving, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah, it's still early days. We're still figuring this all out.
Yeah, it's like the Wild West of AI right now.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to be cautious, to think critically about these apps and not just take them at face value.
Absolutely. And that leads to another important point, the challenges of actually developing these apps.
Right.
It's not just about the technical side, it's about the ethical and cultural considerations too.
Yeah, the source material highlighted some of those challenges.
Like what?
Well, one big one is bias. If the data used to train these AI models isn't diverse and representative, the predictions could end up being unfair.
So it's not just about the algorithms themselves, it's about the data they're being fed.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Right. And then there's the whole issue of user engagement. You want people to take the app seriously, but you don't want to freak them out.
It's a tough balance.
Yeah, you don't want to make them feel like their fate is sealed.
Right. And then you have to consider cultural differences, too.
Oh, yeah, right. Like different cultures view death in different ways.
Exactly. What might seem like a cool app in one culture could be seen as totally inappropriate in another.
Yeah, the source material mentioned how Western cultures might see these apps as like intriguing novelties, while Eastern philosophies might have a totally different perspective.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It really makes you think about how our own relationship with mortality shapes how we perceive this kind of technology.
It's like these apps are holding up a mirror to our own beliefs about life and death.
That's a great way to put it, and it highlights the importance of considering the human element alongside all the technical advancements.
Well said. So we've talked about the tech, the ethics, the challenges, and the cultural aspects. It feels like we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, but there's still one more layer to explore.
Oh, what's that?
The philosophical side, the deeper meaning and implications of all this.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready for that. Let's dive in. Let's do it. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground, talked about the tech, the apps, the ethical stuff. But now I kind of want to get into like the deeper implications of all this.
Yeah, the philosophical side.
Exactly. I mean, these apps are making us think about something we usually try to avoid, right?
Our own mortality.
Yeah. It's like heavy stuff.
It is, but it's also something that's fundamental to the human experience.
I guess so. It's just easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and not really think about the big picture, you know?
Absolutely. But these apps, they kind of force you to confront that big picture.
Yeah, like a constant reminder that our time is limited, even if we don't know the exact date.
It's like a modern twist on that old saying, live each day as if it were your last.
Right, right. But instead of just being a vague idea, it's like backed up by data.
Exactly. It makes it more real, more tangible.
But is there a risk that this knowledge could, like, backfire? Could it make people more anxious, more fearful?
That's definitely a possibility. I mean, not everyone is going to react to this information in a positive way.
Yeah, some people might freak out.
For some, it might be liberating, you know? A chance to really embrace the present moment.
Yeah, like no more wasting time on things that don't matter.
Exactly. But for others, it could be overwhelming, even paralyzing.
It's like how you react probably depends a lot on your personality, your worldview, all that.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to approach this technology with caution, with self-awareness.
Yeah, these apps are tools. And like any tool, they can be used for good or bad.
It all comes back to balance, right? Being aware of our mortality without letting it consume us.
I like that, finding that middle ground.
And this is where things get really interesting because these apps, they have the potential to change how we think about death as a society.
Yeah, we talked about cultural differences, how some cultures are more open about death than others.
Exactly. And maybe these apps could help bridge that gap.
Like by making death more, I don't know, data-driven, more objective.
Maybe it's possible that by making it more tangible, less mysterious, we can start to have more open and honest conversations about it.
Instead of it being this taboo subject that everyone avoids.
Right. It could become something that we can actually talk about, learn from, even accept.
That's a pretty big shift in thinking.
It is, but it's a shift that I think a lot of people are ready for.
It's like these apps aren't just predicting the future, they're forcing us to reevaluate our present.
And to think about what really matters in life.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of AI death clocks.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. I've learned a lot, and honestly, I'm walking away with more questions than answers.
That's often the case when you explore these kinds of complex topics.
True, but hey, maybe those questions are the whole point.
Maybe they are. Maybe it's about sparking curiosity, challenging assumptions, expanding our understanding.
I like that. And who knows, maybe all this thinking about death will actually help us live better lives.
That's the hope, isn't it? To use this knowledge, even if it's a bit unsettling, to empower ourselves.
To make the most of the time we have, however long that may be. Well, to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's giving you some things to think about.
And maybe even inspired you to have some of those tough conversations about life and death.
And remember, like we talked about, time is precious, don't waste it.
Wise words. We